Hello, we're with Skye today. We're going to hear about her journey of curing over 30 years of illness, mental illness, physical illness, being bedridden for 25 years, and now being a health coach, shining the light that's within Living Foods on each and every one of us. You're going to get to feel all of that. So we're going to start with what got you into that situation. What was the main thing that you think put you onto a bedridden situation to begin with? And let's start there.
Thanks, Jen, and thank you so much for having me today. So my journey started back when I was 8 years old. So I'll tell you my journey. I got chickenpox, and from there I couldn't get back to school. So I get through a few days of school, and then my grandparents would pick me up. I was seeing doctors, just resting all the time. My glands were like this. No one knew what was wrong. I then saw an ear, nose, and throat specialist about 2 years or 3 years later who said my tonsils had been eaten away by bacteria and they needed to be removed. And at that point, I'd never had tonsillitis in my life, but I had them removed. I also had my adenoids removed. From there, I progressively got better. I then spent about, I think it's about 5 years. So we're talking from maybe like 11 to say 16, I was a healthy child. I still had like period pain. I still had acne, things like that, growing pains, but I was healthy. Then at that age, I got chronic pain in my pelvis, back, digestive issues, pains across my body, really tired, hormone problems, went to doctors and nobody once again knew what was wrong, went to naturopaths, they tried things, it would ease it a bit, but nothing really got rid of it. It was the problem with the pain I had, it was getting worse and worse and worse, to the point where I missed most of the last couple of years of school. And even when I started university, I couldn't complete it because I was just having surgeries at this point and really sick. So they were removing glands to help with the pain. They were cauterizing the areas to help, hormones, medication. And I was just tired all the time. They did a biofeedback at this point. So when a woman is in labor, you can have a biofeedback machine put on. So you learn to relax the muscles so it's not so painful. And they put this machine on me and they couldn't get a start reading to get me to bring it down because I was in so much pain. So I was really debilitated. I'd just about given up, and they've been doing exploratory surgeries looking for what was wrong to help me. And I went to a very good surgeon who went in, and on my uterosacral sacral ligament was a second uterus. So it was a second piece. They called it endostomatosis, endo being the endocrine system, stroma being organ or meat in wrong place, and osis makes it a disease. It was congenital, so it was there since I was born. But no one had seen it before, and it's under the surface. So I think other surgeons have gone in and I saw the photo before and after of when they removed, like before they removed it and after they removed it. And it's very hard to see. So he removed that, and I woke up and it was like my back clicked into place. And it was like, I woke up and felt so good. I was like, even though there was still pain in my body, my pain had been like started to be nerve pain coming up into the face and stuff. That was gone. I then had about 3 years, and this is when I worked for a short period where I was doing much better. Still had hormone problems, still had chronic fatigue, but I was able to work, still sleeping most weekends, not very well, but I worked. During that period, I started to become anemic and I started to get really dizzy at work. I couldn't get through days of work. And then my mum found me collapsing around the house. She could hear bangs, and I was dropping, collapsing around the house, vomiting, diarrhea. Called an ambulance, went to hospital, had my hemoglobin was really, really low. They gave me, I think, 3 or 4 blood transfusions once I got there. And they're asking me what's wrong. And they're sending gynecologists in because most of my pain is my pelvis and back. And they're going to move me to a hospital to deal with that. And before I left, one of the, because I'd lost a lot of blood, they thought it was as my surgeries as well. They sent down a GI, a gastrointestinal doctor, and he asked me if anything new, any new symptoms had come up. And I said, I had get some burning in the chest only at night and a sharp pain at night. And he said to my mum, I'll do a scope on her, endoscope, and gastroscope. And so I went in, and he said it would take 40 minutes. 14 hours later, they had to bring a trauma surgeon in from another hospital. They'd cut me all the way down. My my duodenum had a perforated ulcer, so it had bled out on both sides, all through my digestive tract, had rotted as well. Now, it got to that point because the pain in my back was so bad, I couldn't feel the pain in my gut. Anyway, I came out of that, and you go from like ICU, HCU, an acute ward, a general ward, and then a private ward, and you're about to go home. And then I projectile vomit blood everywhere, like bright red blood. So when mum had found me collapsing around the house, I'd been vomiting blood, but it was digested. So it's very hard to, it's brown basically. So this time I was bright red. So there was a fresh bleed. So I'm rushed back into surgery, and I come out, they go back in. So they're cauterizing both sides of the area, like to try and help it, which is just a heat treatment. They're trying to create scar tissue so it heals itself. So I come out of this, and they said, if you vomit blood again, we're going to have to take out your stomach, your duodenum, and some of your intestines. Well, I vomit blood again. Back in, they do all this. I didn't eat for close to, well, I was in there for 3 months. So off and on, I wasn't eating much at all for a long period of time. And I was very, very skinny, but I got home and I got back to work. And because my period had stopped, a lot of my pain had stopped as well. And the reason they couldn't, so there's probably ways to stop your period. So I'm jumping here, but no doctors use things like the pill to stop my period, because if you add extra hormones to me, I got very, very sick. So that's how they couldn't treat that pain with that. Anyway, by the end of that year, so 10 months after I'd had this massive surgery, my pain came back. My pain at this point is through my face, down into my hands, down my legs, into my toes. It's so bad. So I ended up on a walking stick. I had my parents as my full-time carers now. So I'm about 25. My parents were my full-time carers, couldn't work. The medications I was taking, so I was waking up in the morning having 500 milligrams of OxyContin, 500 milligrams at night. My breakthrough was 60 milligrams of oxycodone. I was having I was needing to go into hospital, having ketamine, so Botox injections in the spine. I was on Valium, antidepressants, dexamphetamines, stomach medications, hormone medications. They were giving me topical lidocaine, B12 injections because my stomach, I was missing the part of my stomach which was supposed to absorb it, iron infusions. I was literally a walking chemical concoction, right? And this went on for like 5 years until they discovered that putting me into chemically induced menopause stopped my pain. So my pain stopped. There was a lot going on still, but this pain that I had stopped. So I said, I don't want any more chemicals. I want a hysterectomy. So they gave me a hysterectomy. And after the hysterectomy, I went into, my pain was still gone, which was great, but I went into an acute menopause, and it was horrible. So severe depression, I couldn't get up. I really struggled. And the reason, because I had a second piece of uterus, they believed I had, my brain mapped itself with extra estrogen receptors, which meant I really dropped in estrogen level, and my brain really felt it when I went through the menopause. So I came through that, and now my head was so foggy because I was still on all this medication. And this is when it got serious. When I started to come off all the medication, my hair fell out. I dropped down to 37 kilograms, and I'm 5'7.5". I was needing injections to go to the toilet. I was in ICU. I was having surgeries because I was from constipated diarrhea, and I was getting tears. Basically, no one thought I was going to make it. There was so many problems. Anytime they did a blood test, anytime I went into hospital, it was like this accumulation of problems, and no one could pin the source. It was like when I was little. So no one thought I was going to make it. Then this is when I detached from reality and lost my mind, but also I couldn't really remember what had happened. And I was put in a psychiatric unit, and I was taken off the rest of the medication I was on. I was put on a whole lot of psychiatric medication, which made me still feel so horrible. I feel like this was this time in my life where the enlightenment started to happen, where it was like the universe stripped back anything I had learned and was like, this is life, Skye. This is actually life. And I just couldn't cope, is how I see it. Plus, I think there's a protective mechanism too, because I didn't really remember a lot of what had happened. I could tell you some things, but I couldn't remember. And I also always learned the ability to read. Well, at this time, I think I just couldn't concentrate because of the medications they put me on. So I came through this. And I came out of the hospital, came off all the medications. I still couldn't remember that much. I worked for my brother-in-law for a year. I went to the gym. For all intents and purposes, everyone thought I was doing really well this year. And this year I was eating paleo. So I was eating mostly fruits, nuts, seeds, and a meat meal at night. So this was in 2018. So I think I was like 38, 37, 38 at this point. I got through this year. And then at the end of the year, I got shingles through the eye, the trigeminal nerve. So with that was okay until afterwards. I couldn't get up. I couldn't walk, talk. I needed my parents to dress me, get me to a shower. I had to go to a neurological hospital for 10 weeks. They had to relearn to walk, talk, tie my shoes, butter toast. I came out of that and my mental health was terrible. I was living in severe PTSD. During that time in the hospital is when I went vegan. So this second part of the awakening, I call it, I could barely function or think right. But I had this overwhelming feeling that I wasn't supposed to be eating anybody. Like, why am I eating animals when they're not eating me? I don't live in that fear every day. And I guess it comes back to something you said where you've lost so much of your rights and people are dictating everything that you feel like the animal, right? So it's part of my awakening, but I became vegan. So I'm eating vegan hospital food in the neurological hospital. So then I come out of that and I've got severe mental health problems. I spent most of the next year and a half in mental health hospitals. I think there was 9 visits all up. Most were acute visits. At the end, I ended up in private facilities. And when I did get into the private facilities, they put me back on medication I had been on, like an antidepressant I'd been on when I'd been sick. And this triggered something inside of me that I remembered or recalled. It did not fix me, and I was still vegan. And in a private hospital, you're eating quite well vegan. So you're eating like tofu that's just been grilled with salads. You're eating fruits. It's not like the normal hospitals. In fact, when I was in the private hospitals and since I went vegan, my blood work was showing my blood had stopped making proteins. This was all cooked vegan food. So vegan food didn't help me. I felt lighter, but I was still not very well. So I came out of this, I could just function. And then when I got home, I worked out that when I had a glass of wine or alcohol, my PTSD was less. So I started drinking to numb this. And I thought I had a couple of years of being able to do this before I got health problems. Nope. Within a couple of months, I'm back in hospital. My liver's failing and I'm needing infusions. So going through this, now I come out of this and mum and dad said, I've been living with mum and dad my entire life. They've been my carers, all of this. So they said, you can't come home anymore. We can't do this. So I lived in hotels for a bit and then some family members helped me find an apartment. And this is the first time I'm living by myself, cooking for myself, and I still couldn't function that well. And I'm vegan. It's during COVID. So I'm ordering in basic foods or just walking to a local shop and getting like really basic foods. I'm lucky there was somewhere close because I couldn't get up very well and I bring home what I could, but basically I was eating fruits and salads and very basic, like dry roasted pumpkin with like garlic, rosemary maybe, or some steamed cauliflower, like really simple foods because I'm not well. And what I noticed is every time I ate the cooked foods, literally for 4 days afterwards, I was symptomatic. I couldn't get out of bed. The biggest thing was like I literally couldn't get up. It was like being all that. And they diagnosed me with NFD, which displays sometimes as like a stroke. And that's why I couldn't walk and talk. That would all flare up. If I ate the raw foods, I could do basic things. I'm not saying it was like instantaneous, but I could get to the clothesline and put a few clothes out. I'm like, this is interesting. So I'm like, okay, how am I going to, like, what am I willing to do for my health? And I thought, after all I've been through, I'm willing to do anything. What also happened at this time is as I ate more lighter vegan foods and raw foods you feel like the sun is with you. Like you go outside, if you can, when I could get outside, it's like it's life. Like you could literally feel nature once you were eating, I was eating the right food. So I thought, how am I going to manage this? So I could get on Instagram and I saw there were people called raw vegans who were eating fruits and salads. And I was like, I couldn't read a lot about it, but I could see this. So I thought, you know what? I'm a raw vegan. So I just followed that. Jen, within 6 weeks, just about all of my symptoms had gone, including my blood work had improved. Within 6 months, I was working, swimming, walking, seeing family again. My mental health was just amazing. I bought my own apartment. I started the Roar, my Roar website, Roar Skye. My whole life changed. And it just grew from there. And I am the woman I am today, all because I feel I started to incorporate what I was supposed to put in my body.
It's beautiful just how powerful it can be, especially with over 30 years of all of those different things. It's interesting because yours actually seems to be that, like, you had more like physical health issues before it went to mental health issues, versus for me it was also always like a mental health issue that kind of like turns into a physical health issue. um do you think that the way that you were treated in, say, if you're going and getting treated for a physical health issue, did they treat you differently than when you were going and getting treated for a mental health issue?
I could cry right now because you are treated completely differently. You have rights, you can say, you have opinions, you feel dignified. And that is why I say in a lot of interviews that losing my stomach was a walk in the park. There were two reasons that was like that. One, I was treated very, very, very well. The second was, it was the only time in my life where they would go, I feel faint, and they'd do a blood test and my blood hemoglobin would be low. I'd have a stomach ache. Your liver has an infection after the surgery. It's the only time in my life that also I had answers. I think that also helped. But the difference is like, and it's funny because my stomach was removed in one of the hospitals which I had mental health stays in, and if you're physically ill and you push a buzzer and you need even water or your pillow moved or anything, a nurse will come and do it. If you are in a psychiatric unit and you need something desperately, no one can hear you, no one can see you. It's terrible. But what I will say about mental health units is I get why the nurses are the way they are. They've got to be protected. I've seen them be yelled at, screamed at, they've gone through trauma. But we need a new way of dealing with things, because the system right now, when like the worst time of my life was in psychiatric units. Like, so you could say my mental health would have been worse outside them, in just before you go in, but that wasn't bad. The bad part is the way that you're treated.
I think even part of why you would have even ended up in the mental hospital to begin with would have been because of maybe even how you feel treated in a physical sense, just like being locked in with no air and no really, like, not much fresh foods, especially it's pretty low on fruit. I know I only ever got like canned fruits, right? So you don't feel as good, and that can contribute to it as well. And there's also a lot that the nurses will do that they might not even agree with, but they have to do it because it's their job, because the doctor told them, and the doctor might be doing something because someone else told them. So it's always really hard to get to like who's responsible for what. And the other interesting part is it doesn't really seem like they'll often look to food as something for healing in any way. Did they ever ask you about your diet or more so encourage healthy eating?
Not at all. Not at all. So the food in hospitals is terrible as it is. It's like when you're in a private facility, it's completely different. It's like it was beautiful in those facilities, as in what I classify as beautiful. I wouldn't eat it now, but it was a lot of fresh, is what I guess what I'm saying. But I think what you're asking me is do they attribute it to food? And what I see the nurses doing there and the doctors as well, anyone who comes into the psychiatric unit goes into a stress response. So even if they've brought down another doctor just to check you because they think you've got a cold, they're so scared because the way it's set up, it's like it's to me it's worse than a jail, the way it is. But no, food doesn't come into it. I mean, even when I had my stomach removed, I remember saying, can I have a coffee? And they're like, yeah, that's fine. Like, it was, I think it was about 3 weeks after I had been refed, but everything was fine. There's no they're not relating it at all. And when nurses do, this is what I think, when nurses do something they don't want to do, or doctors, is you've got to think, why are you doing what you're doing? Is what I say, is they need, that's part of their journey. But I will say that that experience has given me a strength like no other. Like no other. Those units, they can make you or break you.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that what you were saying too about, well, what I was talking to you about before was how there was like a cancer patient, and she was allowed to just like, all she really wanted was like McDonald's and pop, and that's all she drank during the whole time. And she was only in her 30s, and she ended up passing away. And it's not to say that she wouldn't if she did eat healthier food, but there is a possibility. And it's interesting that that's not really addressed at all. And do you think that part of that might be because certain people don't want to address their own healthy eating habits and lifestyle habits, that they want to be reliant on just, oh, take a pill?
Yeah. So I don't know whether they are aware that that's what they want, but it's true that the awakening of realizing that food can make a difference, even if you know, sometimes we're not ready to accept it. Does that make sense? So, look, when I was extremely sick, I've said this before, is when I was at my, I was medicated, I'm eating, they give me all these protein puddings and you probably know this, and protein shakes, like, and you've got to have them with your meals. I was getting sicker and sicker. And if somebody had presented me with the raw food diet, I would have said, do you know what I've been through? As if that's going to fix it. Like, I thought I needed some professor who had some degree, but that's part of my journey. How I see the nurses and the food and the hospital system is, it could have been another externalized environment. But for some reason, my journey, I'd chosen to go through that, walk that path, walk that hell, to give me the strength to come through. It's like, if that wasn't the view, it would have been something else. Like, the school systems are the same. Everywhere you look in life is really the same. Even when you're in a shop, they're really only narrowing you in with things that we don't need, that are bad for the environment. And it just depends how you perceive them. And we can get the traumas, and you traumatize, right? And the biggest fear is going back to a psychiatric hospital, and then I'm put back there when I'm even sicker. Is like, I feel like it's more spiritual. I needed to create that own hell to get through and become who I needed to be. So I tend not to project blame onto any areas, or even feel that I can fix any areas. I like to just believe that I know the darkest, deepest corners of hell now. And the best thing to do is you just keep shining, because that's the way I feel I've made the biggest difference so far in myself and for other people. So that's kind of where I sit with the foods. I know the horrible role that food plays, but it even plays it when you see kids' parties, like, little kids' parties, they're eating sugary foods to celebrate. Like, it should be sun and fruit and playing by the water's edge. It didn't need to be inside video games, computers, and bad food type thing.
The best example is even just that, like, on a birthday you eat like a death cake, like it's not good
Yeah,
for you,
but
and
we
you
don't know.
celebrate life with eating foods that are like shortening your life or giving you a lower quality of life after you eat the food. And there's also a lot to say. I think it's interesting that both me and you have both lived kind of like hell on earth, which brings you to heaven on earth. But we also recognize for ourselves that, like, we were vegan, and that wasn't enough, right? So
Yeah.
it pushed us finding what actually is like the most natural way of eating, the most natural way of living, that allows you to live with the most light, right?
Yeah. Also, with the veganism, is I was a vegan who was drinking, smoking, had so many physical problems, had mental health issues, was a burden on this planet. Like, I was sucking from this planet, but thinking I didn't have a choice. Once I went raw, I could give to myself, when my cup overflowed, that I can give to animals now. As in, like, I love animals. I couldn't appreciate it. An animal would hurt me. My skin hurt to be touched. I was so sensitive. Now I love animals. I think about animals. I think about the planet. I think about other people. I needed the raw foods. I needed my species specific diet, or what my soul. I know that's it. That sounds very physical. My soul needed the food to see reality, to see so clearly. So even when we say, we've gone vegan and we're eating plant-based for our health, if you're not feeling that well, you've got to keep going on your path, but keep your eyes open. I don't like to say you've got to eat raw, but keep your eyes open. Like, don't give up, because it's just part of your journey. Because I was there. I feel like even paleo was part of it. I feel like, because that was a very light diet. I know I ate meat at night, but it was fruit and nuts all day. And then, meat at night. And then I went to vegan, and it's all a stepping stone. I feel a lot of what I say, you understand, because as you've been to hell and back, and other people can understand. But sometimes if people in their darkest hours, they can't understand yet what I'm saying. You can tell them that, the raw foods will change their life, but they've got a path to still walk. It may be another 10, 15 years for them. Yeah.
If you don't value your own life, you don't value others' lives. Like, there's just that disconnect. And it's also, if someone is disconnected from nature, they literally are disconnected from themselves, because that is them, and they don't even realize that. So when you're taking in those that natural information, you're naturally able to connect with all of that.
I like that, the natural information. It's so different. The world looks so different once you eat raw foods. It's like a completely different reality. And it didn't just give me my health. So a lot of people go on this to cure something, right? And we've come from a mindset of allopathic medicine, where it fixes, or we think it fixes, it just numbs the area, right? This gave me this whole vibrancy of life. So it didn't just get rid of. That was a very small thing. Even I know it was my whole life, right? And a lot of people go into this for health. You have to understand that the health problems for me melted away very quickly, and I live for life. And this is where I try and make sure I tell people is, because a lot of people get into this mentality that they're living to fix something. If you get into that mentality, what I've noticed with these people is, unfortunately, they may have been at a stage where they couldn't walk, and they eat plant-based, they eat raw foods, and they're able to walk. And then they're coming to me just as distressed over sinus. I think you need to appreciate and I remind them, and very simply, they've forgotten, because we bring patterns along with us. And I think part of this raw foods is this gratitude. What I noticed when I ate the foods, my self-voice, and I ate alone, and maybe people need to do that for a period, because I could hear my own voice. And it was so grateful. This tastes so fresh. This is so nice. That voice then starts coming out of my mouth. Everywhere I go, I'm grateful for everything. Everything's fresh. Everything's beautiful. And you need to find that in yourself when you start the foods. And eating the foods in the sun, you probably know this, Jen, is like next level. It's like the way to go.
It's in the beginning, if you're coming from really a lot of cake or something, a fruit might not taste that sweet, but with time, it just it tastes better and better each day. And I really like what you're saying about during your meal, having that alone, but also just almost repeating affirmations during that time, connecting with yourself. I know for me, when I'm having a meal, I always try to not listen to anything else, so that you can just kind of collect your thoughts throughout the day and see what comes through. I'm always actually looking forward to that. And I guess if you have disordered type of thoughts in your head about food, then it's nice to have a podcast or something, and you might want to listen to interviews while you're eating, and that's fine for a time too. But having something that works for you during meals like that is super healing for your own self-care and self-love and nourishment.
Definitely. We have to remember, this is how I see it, right? Is all the good things in life I couldn't get to until I ate raw foods. But once you eat raw foods, you still got to, you don't have to, but you're very drawn to the sun and practices like yoga, exercise, nature. you've got to make sure you're open to that, because if you ate raw foods and continue to stay in toxic relationships, use a lot of chemical products on your body, go to places which are very low vibration, you will be pulled out. Do you know what I mean? You will have thoughts of other foods. You're just going to be triggered all the time. You've really got, how I see the raw foods, it's like the gate, the opening, the key. Once you're through, and you think about it, if we were living in nature as it was intended, as we were born and grow, you literally would walk into fruit, or as you call them, ovaries. I love it. I think that's a great, you literally have the tree, and they, for us, look delicious. And that's what we were supposed to eat. But after that, we're supposed to be eating all day. You're then supposed to enjoy God's garden, right? Is what is there. You're not supposed to I think it's really important that there's that side of it as well, is that it's the key, but you've got to make a conscious effort to spend time with the sun, spend time doing exercise, spend time with good people. If you ingest negative and toxicity, it can possibly win again. You're in another battle, right? Is you're filling with good, and then there's the bad. You want to really give yourself that strength. I think you said something which is really important as well about if you look at fruit and fruit makes you like feel sick or something, that's the point you're at. You're right. Don't eat the fruit. Look for, even if you start with raw vegetables or cooked vegetables or vegan junk food. I'm not even sure that's the right thing to say, but like, a basic vegetable patty of some sort. That's where you're at. You can't jump up levels. It's like if I tried to become breatharian tomorrow, I'd die. So would someone on a sad diet. If you go straight from that to juicing, you can get sick. I know I've heard that people always put on the news, Ashton Kutcher tried the raw foods diet and ended up in hospital. Well, Ashton Kutcher, I don't know what he was eating before, but if you go straight into juicing only apples, that's it. There is going to be that possibility. As Dr. Morse says, he says that detoxification is an art. But I think that's what he was doing, detoxification. I like the lifestyle. I like to, as I was saying before, I feel there's a place for that if you're quite sick, but I'm not a big fan of, believe a lot of people are getting trapped for 20 years, 25 years. I've done the sick time. I'm now here for the lifestyle, the love.
They've taken too much of like that detox mindset. You're always going to believe that there's like something bad that you need to heal, and you're never going to heal, because if your mind thinks you're bad, then you're always going to be bad. Like the same thing with believing you have a mental illness and then continuing to have that mental illness if you're like focused on it all the time, because where focus goes, energy flows, and what you focus on, you become. And what you believe, like that has a big part in what you're going to do in your life as well, and how you feel. So it's all connected. And even if you look into like alkalinity in that, like what you're saying about a fruit not being healthy for someone, like if their digestion is really off because of even just being really depressed or something that day, and they eat that food, it might not digest the same. So it goes into like your mentality as well. But it's also beautiful because once you start digesting the raw living foods, it's also going to influence how you feel energetically, which then influences your mental process, and you start thinking positively automatically. And when you feel better, you think better, you do better, and then you become better.
That's also true. It's hard to explain. You have to get there, but I do believe it's a fine art every day. It's just like on the diet people are on now. They don't eat the same thing every day. It's adjusting every day. Like at the moment, I'm enjoying higher watery fruits, whereas in winter I really wanted the denser veggies and stuff. It's always changed, but it's all raw foods. So
what does a day food look like for you right now?
So right now I am having a lot of watermelon. There's some beautiful organic watermelons which have come in from the Northern Territory in Australia, and they're so fresh. I'm eating basically watermelon all day. I've also been craving dates in the afternoon. I've been having a big salad at night. A lot lighter than I used to eat. So when I usually was eating a lot more, like I'd get up, have say like 8 apples or maybe 2 huge papayas. Then I would have in the afternoons a lot of dates. And then at night, one of my like recipes, which would be like, slightly warmed coconut noodles, which might have some bell peppers and broccoli through it. I was really enjoying that, but my body has this real calling at the moment to be really light. And I find the watermelon is so light. I was having a lot of rock melons and honeydew melons, but even watermelon feels a lot lighter than that as well. So yeah, I'm eating a lot lighter than usual, but that's just only been for a couple of weeks. But I'm enjoying it. I just feel so good.
Yeah, I find that it's really nice when you eat natural foods because you don't really have to choose. Like the season choose for you. Like whatever is ripe is literally my favorite fruit at that time. Because I wouldn't want to eat something that's not in season at that time. It wouldn't be my favorite fruit. So it kind of changes all the time. And
Yeah.
you also just in tune with what your body needs because it's a natural food.
Yeah.
And I even find like if I don't listen to my body, if I'm craving avocado or something more fatty, and I instead eat like really low fat foods, I don't feel as good as if I wanted a fatty food. But if I don't want fats that day and I ate fats, I would feel crappy. So you really have to be like in touch with that.
Yeah, I find one of the blessings was when I got well, because I was so detached from everything. It was literally my intuition which was getting me to eat. I didn't know food combining rules. I didn't know what you were supposed to eat. As I've got into this, I'm very careful as to how much I go and read or spend time reading what other people do with raw vegan foods or even learn about them, because you start to incorporate that and think that that's you. As in, you start to learn that, fats are not optimal, this is optimal, and it becomes part of your consciousness. That wasn't with me before. So I'm very mindful of that, and I try and stay true to it. And it's funny how staying true to yourself in this world can be difficult. It was when I had been detached, not so much, but when you spend a lot of time like in the media and reading what other people are doing, and because people do comment a lot too, and you take that on as well. So you've got to stay true. But it's my process of getting well has built to where I am now, as in like you don't just, and I think people need to realize that is I didn't just wake up and start, where I am now. You build up, you take baby steps. Every day is a baby step, step forward. And the great thing about raw foods is you stay so present. It's hard to have PTSD. It's harder to be triggered. It's harder to be anxious and be forward thinking. Like you'll have goals, but you're not preoccupied with daydreaming and things, because the foods keep you present. I think that has really helped me build the life I have now.
For sure. I also think that it can disconnect you from yourself unless that person is also like really connected to themselves.
Mm.
Otherwise, right? So if you lead people to that same place, like, and more so for myself, like I always guide people back to themselves. But if that person isn't doing that and they expect you to like follow them, like that's kind of like a red flag, right?
Yeah, I also remind people I want nobody to follow me. I want people to fall in love with themselves. Like I want people to be so in love with themselves, they know what they need to eat, they know what they need to do, they know they need to stay in their job or leave their job. I never want to be that role model who is like, I'm eating this way, you need to eat this way. I'm doing this exercise, you need to do this. That's not, and that's the problem with a lot of people selling things, is they believe that their way is ultimate. Whereas I'm more like, well, if it doesn't resonate, that's fine. I want you being you. I think if the whole world was thinking that this way, we'd be all doing so much better.
That's what I loved about your first interview. I noticed that it was so different from everybody else what you were saying, because you were just saying like actually what you went through. And sometimes that can be the same, but it's not always the same. Like I know for me, when I would journal a lot, if I look back in my journals and then I read someone's book they wrote, it'll be like really similar because we're like kind of connecting to that same energy. And with what you were saying, like I remember it helped me a lot because you were saying in that interview even like that you ate like avocados or something, and
Yeah.
I wasn't eating at that time, and I was like, you know what, I should try that, and I felt better during that time. And you also didn't worry about like, oh, I had avocado and then I ate fruit after, and now I'm gonna die because I ate fats before my fruit. I was like, bro, this is a fruit fat. Like you've waited a couple hours, you can obviously digest a fruit after. So it just kind of helped me with that.
Oh, I'm so glad, because I think when I first got it. So from the life I've come from, what was bad was, I got off all the opiates I was on. I psychiatric medications weren't even classified as bad. Foods weren't that bad, and I'm here eating just raw foods from where I'd come from, which was basically like just medication my entire life, plus a whole heap of things like protein drink things, and then trying to cope with foods. Here I am eating raw foods. I thought I was a legend. I'm like, I'm winning no matter how I did it. I thought I was amazing. And then all of a sudden you come into this culture and people are saying to you, you're not supposed to do that, do this. I'm like, guys, they're veggies. Even if you combine them, you're going to fart. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's the worst that can happen. Maybe you get a little bit of the runs, but you'll learn. You learn, and then you'll go, right, I don't need that. But what I have learned with the body is just say even something like you eat, if I eat too much avocado now, it wasn't like this at the start, but now I can bloat. But there are times my body, I believe, wants to compensate. So it can need something so badly that it's willing to bloat a little. Does that make sense? So because the avocado can, especially mentally, I think it's the omegas. There's lots of vitamin E in it as well. There's something about the fat and my ability of my nervous system and brain to recover. It just works better. I don't get the same with the coconut fat, but avocado fat, I do. And I listen to that. And sometimes I feel my brain needs it, but my stomach finds it hard. But there's a give and take. Like, you've got to really, otherwise, I promise you, if you get on the track long enough of healing, there's her name's Olivia Herzog, and she said in a post the other day, there's always something to heal. Like, we're aging, we're in an oxidative stress environment. We are going to deteriorate over time. Naturally, it's part of the life cycle. If you spend your whole life, you haven't lived. And that's what I wanted to do. The raw foods gave me life.
Exactly. Like, all healing is happening every single day. Like, regeneration, your body is.
It's right.
So people do have to realize that, like, healing is actually a daily practice. It's not really an end result, but there's obviously better places that you can be at in that journey. And did you include like dried fruits, say, in the beginning to help you with nutrition?
Yeah, I'll just say also, I think people distract from the real problem by focusing on the symptoms. So it's another distraction in life. Like, they haven't really dealt with the problem is why they spend their life trying to fix symptoms. Now, as for at the start, I was eating, like, I would get up, I'd have, say, half a banana. So I'd have a banana, maybe two, half an avocado, some dates, maybe some sesame seeds on it. Then I would snack on any fruits that got my attention, like that I just felt like, maybe like pineapple or some watermelon. I would have nuts. I would have dried fruits like apricots, figs. But I learned very quickly that I had to get, and I didn't have them very long. This period was only about 3 months, and then I really was just kind of fruits. But I would, with the dried apricots, I learned very quickly that if you didn't get the organic ones, they had a preservative. I think it's 202 sulfites, and it's the same which is in wines. Yeah, and it just makes you feel hungover. You eat it. It wasn't the worst thing in the world, but my whole face was like swollen, my sinuses, you couldn't look at the sun. So I would get organic. There's a tip there, you can get organic figs. But I don't know if I spoke about this in Jillian's interview or not, but I was drawn in the bowls of food that I was eating to anything bright and vibrant. So I realized right away that the nuts did not look alive or living. And I was like, when you eat this way, everything starts speaking to you, the sun, the food. So I'm like realizing this, I'm not meant to eat. It just was natural. I'm like, I'm not meant to have the dried spices. I'm not meant to have the salt and pepper. I'm meant to have the bright stuff, right? That's how my diet evolved naturally. And remember, I'm so disconnected. I know a lot of people's brains, they kick in and be like, well, I need omega-3s, or I need this and I need that. I swear I'm doing the best. I've had blood tests. My blood work is perfect. My health, I feel amazing. And I'm not telling other people to eat the way I eat. I'm telling them to listen to their bodies.
Yeah, I find when I try to have like in the beginning I tried to still balance all those like whole food plant-based vegan things of like needing to have seaweed every night in the evening and sea salt on every meal and make sure you get Brazil nut out every time and chia
Yes.
seeds, like really, really strict with those things. But there comes a point where that energy of like even taking a pill or something just coming from like I'm not healthy enough, where that's not healthy.
Yeah. You know what it was for me is because I had callings to do things like I remember at the start I was having like tablespoons of, I think it was linseed oil, and that was omegas. My body changed straight away. Anything I put in it, when you eat raw foods, is so strong. But what resonated with me is the shape and the geometry of life that I was really called to. So I started this at the end of winter and went into spring, and it was like everything I could see. So I'm finally out of the house. Remember, I've practically been in a bed for like 10, 15 years, 15 years. Like I haven't seen much of life. What I noticed was everywhere was a beautiful geometry and this beautiful language. And when you eat the foods, like, when you pick up fruits with your hand, it's almost like it's meant for it. The squishy little cells, they're like little cells that are going to fill your body and make you feel good. When you look, just put the vitamin, which is supposed, just say they made a vitamin which had everything you need in a day, put it on a table, it'd be dry, dead. The shape is not sacred. It's not something, not squishy good. Like, so I stopped taking anything other than wanting those bright foods in my body. And I know I keep doing this, like, I want to feel like this, but there was a girl who had on her story the green, I don't know what she called it. I call it the green bean experiment. So you get green beans, you can get anything really, but boil the green beans and put them on the counter and grab the fresh green beans and get a bit of paper and write down what you see with the cooked and write down what you see with the non-cooked. So I'm like, I didn't write it down, but I'm like, right, floppy, gray, dull, lifeless. Ugh. And then I went structured, bright, sharp. Like everything was good on one and everything was negative. I mean, if you're addicted or you really like foods, I'm sure you could find something in something that was good. And maybe that's what keeps people alive. But that is, we are the words. The words, what we speak. I mean, God created the whole world with what he spoke. We are creating our world with what we speak. Food is just part of our experience, right? So this is all coming together. There's lots of, you get lots of downloads when you eat this way. It's constant. But one of the
Yeah.
big, I guess you share your downloads in a way you're trying to relate for other people. Like I want other people to see how they can get to where I am or how they can feel this good. But that was another thing. It's like when you get that, and I assume there's even a difference of looking and talking to the bean hanging on a tree on its vine.
Yeah.
It would probably be even more. I'd be like, there's sun around it and it just looks so pretty. And, there's different levels. But when I had that realization, I'm like, that's what really led me to just eat the way I eat and not, I've never looked at macros, micros, and I cured my anemia as well. So my anemia, I'm missing the part of my stomach which absorbs the iron, which is the duodenum. And so I was told I need infusions for the rest of my life. So you can imagine my doctor's jaw dropping when I say I'm eating only raw foods with no nuts and my anemia. So I don't have low iron anymore. And I don't have B12. I don't need B12. I had one injection at the start and now it's fine. So I'm not supplement. If I need to, I will supplement. But at this stage, it's not for me.
For me,
Yeah.
I only take like I would take vitamin D because it's not as sunny here, and
Right.
then the rest is like I kind of see almost eating a lot of like greens as a supplement. That's like a whole food. Like even if you had some wheatgrass one day, or like
Yeah.
juice is actually a supplement because that's not natural. Like I don't know where you stand on that, but I've never been much of a juice person because I feel like you could actually still have blood sugar issues, honestly, with that. And you could overeat, like you're just not really in tune with nature because it's not even a natural food. And like I can't do it. Like I usually don't make smoothies because like when I grab a peach, I don't want to put that in a blender. Like I feel like I'm like destroying it. Like I can't. Like it almost
Yes.
hurts me with the
So
blender.
first off, this is psychologically, this is what I've come to recently. Psychologically, I love all my recipes. They're there for people who psychologically need them, and I psychologically believe that's why I needed them. But if you watch a little kid and they're closer to source than anyone, near a blender, they can't handle it. We actually then become that. I'm not saying it's bad or wrong. And I'm not saying I eat perfectly, because perfectly is if I had my own garden and I grew it myself and ate it. We do what we do because that's where we need to be. But I find juicing even more so harder to justify than even blending, because you're taking part of it away. Part of the fruit's gone. I think because you have to know that I got well noticing that the closer to source I did anything, like the closer I got better. Any step away, I'm not feeling as great. I'm not saying it's bad. It's just a different feeling. I do believe juicing has a place, as in it's a great modality for people. If you've got a deficiency and you need to get more of something, but that's where I see it. I classify it there. Plus, also, if I juice, it dumps into my I have dumping syndrome, or it dumps into my small intestine. Because there's no fiber to slow the uptake in the intestines, sugar goes straight through the wall. So it's like sugar, 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 instead of being like sugar, fiber, fiber, sugar, fiber, fiber, sugar going through the wall. You've just got sugar. I get a heart palpitation, blood sugar spike, sweats, have to lay down, diarrhea. I got this before with different foods. It's called dumping syndrome. But the only way I get it is with juice. I can do green juices, and I can do other things, like if you do something like lemon or citrus where it's not as sweet, but that's where I am with juicing. So I feel it's a modality.
Okay. I don't want the interview to be too long, so I have 2 more questions.
Sure.
And I have like a lot more questions, so I want to like do a live one time, and we can like ask the questions I want to hear as well. But the first thing is, what's like the most embarrassing thing, do you think? Since because I was gonna ask this on the Q&A, but I was like, we can't do that because you didn't even share your story. So I want to end with like, first, like, what was the most embarrassing thing that you think you went through, like something that you just like haven't really shared, or you have shared it, but it's like, like for me, okay, like I'll start like,
okay,
I was in hospital. I was 21. I was in diapers, poo in my pants, like something like that. Or I was kicked out of buffet because of bulimia. Or I lived in my car for 3 months. Like, just so people don't feel alone. Like, I've probably ate food at the dumpster. I've eaten like, I've stealed food from my sister's like foods because I wanted it for like bad reasons. Like, like we all do things that you have to forgive yourself in order to move on.
Sure. So I've been in diapers in a psychiatric unit. Because of the medications you're on, you just can't stop going to the toilet. I've gone to the toilet in my pants. I'll tell you a funny incident where I got a guy in a psychiatric unit to help me with my eyeliner, and I worked out he drew glasses on me, and I was walking around outdoors of the hospital all day talking to people with glasses drawn on my face. There's that when I ran away from what was going on. I couldn't really run. I was quite ill. I hid in the bush. I went to the toilet in what I was wearing. When I was really sick, I couldn't get up or shower for days. Look, the lowest point, I think, for me, was just before I went raw. So I had been drinking for 3 months. I'd come out of hospital, moved into my new place, and I was plant-based. I went back to drinking 3 times. So this is the last time I drank. I was laying there so sick that I would roll over and vomit. There was blood and urine in the bed, and I'm still drinking, right? So I would go back to drinking. And I think these times give me a superpower now. So I don't know whether I see them as embarrassing or just part of my journey to get where sometimes you need to go through such hell to get the determination to know you're never going to let your body get there again. Like, I believe I'm so well as well because I don't want to be in a psychiatric unit. I don't want to be in a bed with blood and vomit. And I don't want to be the girl I was when I was little, who couldn't go out and play with her friends because I always got sick. Once I discovered even an inkling of something which was going to give me life, I grabbed onto it with both hands and just pulled myself through like a rebirth, really, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's rebirth and regeneration for sure.
That's
I think
right.
that for you has also been you understanding that like you chose it, but
Yes.
it seems like you also accepted that everything that was bad, you also chose that, and that's allowed you to now decide to choose better for yourself.
Once you take responsibility for everything that's happened in your life, no matter how much it was somebody else that inflicted it on you, look at the steps you took to get there. That's how I see it, as in like, because raw foods was always in front of me. It's always in front of everybody. So is the sun, but sometimes we can't see it. So we have to go to peeing our pants in our bed to get the strength to go, this isn't life. That isn't what life is. And there is so much more out there for people.
One more question before the last. What role do you think that the food played, like before even developing any sort of mental illness or physical illness?
I want to say all, but that's not true because it's just part of a cycle. But it is the circuit breaker. It's the circuit maker and the circuit breaker, right? So it broke the bad circle and it helped create the new one. It is powerful because it's right in front of us. It's so attractive. Its source has given it to us. Our meal ticket, right? Our life. It gives us life. I think well, where we're at, I only see us getting clarity through what we put in our bodies because it's something that's constant, right? And it can break. Once you get something good going, the way you interact with traumas, with people that you don't like, with things that stress you out becomes very different. It is our fuel. And then what we do with the fuel is really important too. But it's massive. Like I don't see, in my experience from where I've been through and what I've tried, is I don't know how you from if you're this is what I see here, I sit with it. If you've lived a life where you've looked after yourself and you're eating plant-based and you're really grounded, I believe you can eat cooked foods and live a happy life. Cooked plant-based foods. If you have been sick in any way, and I believe trauma relates a lot around it, even if it was a generational trauma, it's something, it's in your genes even, you will only be able to have raw foods. As in, if you've been sick that long, if you go back, maybe up to 20 years, you may be able to go back for periods. And these are people who've been very sick. That's where I stand, I think, with the foods is if you've been sick, you're going to raw foods is going to be the way. If you've looked after yourself, been in a good upbringing, haven't had much, trauma or stress, you're going to be able to have cooked plant-based. That's kind of where I sit with it.
Think so, except that sometimes people that are vegan have never tried raw vegan. So like they at least have to try it before they would know that for themselves. And I think that once you've like raised your vibration in a way by eating living foods, it's hard to go to like lower vibrational activities. Like you probably wouldn't have ended up having like an addiction to drinking, right? If you were already feeling, you need that escape. And I think that it also can, like, if you're eating unhealthy food, that can almost activate certain genes within people, right? So like we kind of do create those things, but unconsciously, until you can consciously choose to like not activate those genes and activate the healing pathways within us.
So when I first got well, it literally felt like I was turning on all the strong genes in my body. Like, how you get downloads and it's very strong when it first comes on because you're going from the density difference when Dr. Morse talks about angstroms, and it's hard to understand exactly what angstroms are, but let's put them they're a form of measurement of electromagnetic energy. So if you've got fruits are at like 13,000, especially like grapes, vegetables, this is raw. Fruits raw are at 13,000, vegetables at raw are at 8,000. You steam a piece of broccoli, it drops to 1,000. So that's not even McDonald's here. We're talking about steamed broccoli drops that much. So when you first awaken, that's why you feel you've jumped. So the download that I got, or the feeling I got, was literally like, even looking at my body, I looked more like stronger genes in my family. My skin went quite brown. My nails got quite strong. My hair started to grow again. It literally, as if you do, it's like epigenetics. I mean, this is a medical thing, right? It's epigenetics. So families who eat the same, do the same, stress the same, are going to keep switching on the exact same genes. And that's 80% now, they say. It's not just, yeah. So, of course, I believe the raw foods, and they do it very quickly in my experience.
Yeah, it's almost like picking up a weight. Like my dad had like a six pack and stuff, but if I don't train that, I won't have that. But if you do, you do.
That's
So we
right.
definitely have,
Train your
and
genes.
it's also like I was in that state for a while where I was like you were saying how, well, you got to just think logically. Like if it's a fruit or a veggie, it's obviously healthy. But there can be like a point where it's not exactly true, like where I was only eating the cooked fruits and veggies because I was like, well, it has to be true. But then you kind of understand more, like reading Dr. Doug Graham's book, where you just understand like no other animal in nature is eating cooked foods, and you just like connect to that and try that out for yourself before deciding that eating a bunch of cooked food is good or good for you, right?
Well, I call it leveling up, right? So if you're an alcoholic, you've been chronically sick, you've got all these diagnoses, you're stuck in a bed, and most of what goes into you is what you've got I've got plant-based food going in, but you've got alcohol, cigarettes, I've got bad memories. And then from there, if that person eats only raw foods, that's just a massive jump. But once you're up there, you can keep going to levels. And even the top levels we know, as Dr. Morse will probably say, there's levels we don't even know about. So our consciousness keeps growing. But I think where most people are at, compared to being in that situation, and even in your situation, if we get a bit of gas from food, at least we then learn. Or if we're not feeling good, it makes us look, it strives, we then go looking for what we can do better, how we can feel better. So it's about, listening to the body.
Exactly. You've beautifully followed your inner self for sure, and your body and nature. And of everything that like you've ever shared and ever learned, this is the last question, by the way. If everything was going to be destroyed, like all of your videos on YouTube and whatever books you've created, courses, anything that you have, all of that's gone, but you can only leave one concept, one piece of information, even if it's only a couple sentences, like what would that be? What would you leave behind?
Love you, be your own inspiration and your own hero every day. That's what I'd leave. Especially the self-love is, you can eat all the raw food in the world. You can go and help at charities. You can help other people. But if you don't come home every day and tell yourself you love yourself, you're not really here for the reason. You're not following why you actually are here. If you love yourself, everything else around you starts to, around you, when they're around you, love themselves more too. And I think I can't stress enough that, like, I will literally, if I'm not feeling that great, I can literally go to bed and repeat that I love me over and over for an entire day. That is how much self-love I have found. I couldn't do that at the start. I didn't even know what self-love was at the start. So I'm going to tell you guys self-love.
Yeah, we're only able to love others and understand others as deeply as we love and understand ourselves.
That's right. I think that's also where that veganism concept comes from, where you say, when you need to be a healthy you need to be healthy vegan because you're an animal. You've got to love you. The first person to love is yourself.
Self-love is loving everything. And if you don't love
Yes.
yourself, probably don't love nature or something. You gotta love yourself first, right?
That's right.
That's beautiful. I love that throughout all of this, like even with all the food, it's not like, oh, my favorite thing, the thing I love most is fruit. It's I love myself, which is
Yeah.
all of that, honestly.
Yeah. I love myself enough to put the food I was meant to have in my body.
Yeah. And if you don't believe that, or if you don't want to feel good, you're going to keep choosing the foods that don't make you feel good. So it's all up to us, and in our hands, it's in our reach. We grab the fruit and we eat it, and that's up to us.
Yes, that's exactly right.
It's been beautiful to talk with you. You can find all of her links below. Definitely follow. I love seeing your fun recipes, which is also beautiful to see that you just have fun with the food, but it's also so simple and makes you feel good when you're eating it and after. Definitely a beautiful person inside and out. So definitely check that out. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in our next videos. We'll definitely go live on Instagram, so follow us both. Have a wonderful day.
Bye.